Do you have plans to move cattle over state lines this summer? Our Grow co-host Marilyn Barnett has more from the state ag director.
Livestock producers may be moving cattle around right now for spring and summer grazing. Now, if you need to cross state lines, there are a few things to be aware of. Director of the Nebraska Department of Agriculture, Greg Ibaugh, joins us on the phone. Mr. Ibaugh, thank you so much for being here with us. What requirements do livestock producers need to keep in mind when crossing state lines?
Well, for almost all states around Nebraska, there are import restrictions in place that require certain types of health certificates and or animal identification as animals move across state lines. So they need to check with their destination state for what expectations the state veterinarian would have.
And there's an agreement between Nebraska and South Dakota. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, in order to try to facilitate the movement of cattle between South Dakota and Nebraska, we've entered into a commuter grazing agreement with South Dakota that eases some of those restrictions or requirements and provides for those producers to provide notification to the Nebraska and South Dakota state veterinarian.
When it comes to animal identification, is a brand enough anymore? Are more people going to the electronic IDs? Are there going to be requirements changing in that regard? What do you think?
USDA and their animal disease traceability system that they've put in place expect that states have official identification in those animals that cross state lines. This commuter agreement that we've put together with South Dakota allows for cattle to come across the state lines with their brand within the brand areas, as well as their herd identification for this year as a transition year. Then next year, this fall, as they're doing preg check, they will need to make sure that those animals all have either a Bangs vaccination tag that's still present, install a new Bright tag that is considered USDA official identification, or use an EID tag for future movements across the state lines.
All right, Greg Ibaugh, thank you so much for joining us here.
Livestock is worth $4 billion to the state's economy, but some say zoning rules may be holding us back from doing even more. Here's part 2 of our special reports.
Looked west and we found a lot of opportunity in Nebraska.
Trading the hills of Virginia for the wide open countryside of Nebraska, Steve Wolf was drawn to a state whose potential for livestock may be unparalleled.
Nebraska has a lot of advantages over a lot of other states, and water is clearly the #1 advantage. And any kind of livestock industry, there's a lot of opportunity in Nebraska.
17 years after Wolf Den Dairy set up near Kearney, you won't find many others who have followed.
Since then, things have changed a little bit, and a lot of it is the local zoning. You just got a whole lot more people out there that you got to persuade that you're doing the right thing.
Many enjoy meat, eggs, and cheese, but what smells like money to some stinks to others.
You can't send your kids outside to play. You can't have your windows open at night. We were here first. It's definitely nothing to put next to a town.
That was the reaction some had 7 years ago for a cattle proposal near Ravenna.
Unfortunately, they hear the bad stuff, and there's a lot of good stuff out there, and that's what the livestock industry has not particularly done a great job in the past on educating the public on what we're doing.
Livestock producers can invest in high-tech systems to protect the air and water and have all the permits, but if they don't convince their neighbors, that planning could be for nothing.
It's not just the regulatory requirements and the environmental protections that go with that decision. It's the policy uncertainty of how much can I invest in planning such an activity when I don't know for certain the process involved.
That uncertainty is built into the law.
In Nebraska, we operate under local control and zoning control in the state. So it's the local governing authorities' decision to make to allow in new livestock operations.
Some producers who may want to expand don't, not wanting to fight that battle.
Be denied by a county board or something, it gets discouraging, and it makes it so that other individuals don't want to go and invest that effort.
Dairy farms are expanding in South Dakota and Minnesota, states that may be more welcoming than Nebraska.
That's a possibility. That's why we just have to stay on the positive side and just show those operators that are looking to move the advantages of Nebraska, the feed, the water, and the quality of life.
In Iowa, there's no local zoning of agriculture. Decisions are made at the state level. Nebraska values local input, but there are so-called livestock-friendly counties. It's not an honorary title, but a way to designate counties that are open to expansion, removing some fear of the unknown.
We don't have any rules on the books that explicitly state that this process leads to certain approval.
Steve Wolf says livestock-friendly counties are a great start, but he wants to build on that, working with counties and the state to attract more farmers like this, where it makes sense.
We still have the same opportunity here in Nebraska. We just kind of need to get on board, and a lot of it starts with educating the public and our consumers, what we're doing, and just educating them about large livestock confinements.
We'll wrap up that series coming up after Kent's forecast, which is up next.